You or someone you love is a high-achieving executive or entrepreneur. Others expect you to have it all together all the time. But the truth is this: it takes a tremendous amount of energy and hard work. You sacrifice a lot and are wondering if it's really worth it. People make changes for one of two reasons: from the rock bottom of desperation or from a point of inspiration. Welcome to Season 2 of our LinkedIn Live series, where we will spend the next 6 episodes focusing on a vital yet often overlooked aspect of leadership and personal development: unblocking and harnessing the flow state. We'll explore how tapping into this state can significantly amplify your potential as a leader and bring a renewed sense of purpose and fulfillment to the role. Tune in as we explore heart coherent leadership, a transformative approach that aligns emotional intelligence with decision making. Discover how it elevates your leadership and transforms your organizational culture into a more dynamic, responsive, and innovative environment. Every week on Freedom Flow Fridays, join Dr. Anna Davies, Dr. Amanda A. Carpenter, and myself, Suzette West, as we expand the conversation, delving deeper into the realm of heart-coherent leadership and the transformative power of flow. We invite you to join us as we unblock the flow to your freedom, week by week. Hello, everyone. Suzette West here.
Hello.
Hey, Amanda, Dr. Davies, Dr.
Hello.
Carpenter. So we're back again for Season 2 of Freedom Flow Fridays. We've got some really cool episodes planned over the next six sessions. We got 6 episodes planned out for you. And we're going to be focusing on flow. And today, we're going to first start out with a definition that I got from the Medical News Today. And it says, the term flow state describes a mental state in which a person is completely focused on a task or activity. They are directing all their attention toward the task, and they do not experience many thoughts about themselves or their performance. Some people refer to this informally as being in the zone. The concept of flow comes from the field of positive psychology, which is the study of things that help humans thrive. Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, an influential part of the movement, coined the term. Flow is similar to mindfulness as both focus on the present moment. However, people often use the term flow in reference to situations in which they are being productive, and it can be a state of mindfulness regardless of whether they are doing a task. So basically, when you're being mindful, in mindfulness, it doesn't really pertain. In mindfulness, you're not really doing anything. You're just focusing on being mindful. Whereas being in the flow, you are being mindful, but you're in the process of doing something and you're engaged in the flow. And when we're in the flow of life, that's when things open up for us. So I just want to leave that right there. So the main things we're going to touch on for today is what is flow, which I just described. How does it happen? How do we fall out of flow? I mean, it's so easy to fall out of flow. And then lastly, how do we get it back? And we're also going to invite some pieces that concern um, stress, addiction, homelessness, because this is what Dr. Davies is. This is her field of expertise, and so we may get into that. Um, and Amanda, you what is your field is in genomics, right? Is that what you right? Your doctorate's degree?
Human performance. My doctorate is in physical therapy, so
Okay,
really my
okay,
specialty is in human performance, how to optimize human
got
performance.
it. Wonderful. So that relates. All right. So let's get the conversation started. As always, perfectly imperfect. We're not here trying to be perfect. We're just here to have a conversation. Um, so let's start off by and we started this tradition in season 1. We're gonna drop into the heart real quick. This is a exercise called the heart focused breathing. It's a tool that was developed by the Heart Math Institute, and it's just kind of to get us centered and in our hearts and ready for this conversation. So, Amanda, did you want to lead this one?
Sure. So everybody
Okay.
just drop down into focusing your energy and intention on the chest area, right at the level of the sternum. You can see where my hand is if you're watching us. And just gently imagine your breath is flowing in and out of this region. Breathe a little slower and a little deeper than usual. So as you breathe, just focus on the gentle movement of your hand away from your body. And this is a technique that we can keep our eyes open for, or we can close our eyes. And as we're speaking on flow today, this is a technique that can actually put us back into flow. It's a coherence, a coordinated, rhythm of every system in our body. And the reason that we just did this together is to coordinate the three of us to get in sync together, to get in flow together. So
Mhm.
when we talk about flow state, the way that I always explain it to my patients and to my clients, because so many of them have human performance, they've been in athletics, it is that state that an athlete gets in to perform. Right. So, if anybody, especially the higher the risk, the more of a flow state. So I've also had the opportunity to work with industrial athletes. So people who are climbing trees and climbing electrical poles and dealing with electricity. So they have to get in this zone where nothing else matters and they are present. It's an extreme mindfulness, but it's also a state of energy conservation. Like that's what's really important is when we are in flow, we are actually conserving energy. So we may still be utilizing energy, but not at the degree of drain when we're forcing things. So that's another key aspect of flow is the energy conservation aspect of things.
Yeah, because it when you're in the flow, um, you use less energy.
Mm-hmm.
You're not using as and things just seem to effortlessly happen, right? What is it that what is it that gets us into the flow? I guess let me ask the questions and then you guys can riff off it. Like um what how do we get into flow? It's a state, right? It's a state that we get into when the heart and the mind are in sync and working together on a certain task, and it's something that we enjoy, right? We're enjoying it, and
Correct.
therefore it just starts to flow. We start to get into a rhythm of getting the thing done, and we're feeling so good about it because we're getting the thing done. And then it's just like when you're done doing the thing, it's like you can step back and, oh, wow, I really just did that. And you're like so excited, whatever that thing is. Conversely, when we're falling out of flow, it's like pulling teeth. It's like so much effort just to get the next task done. It seems like it's a struggle. Um, Frustration starts to rise. Okay. And then we start to self-sabotage, like, I'm never going to get this done, I'm taking too much work, this is bad, this is bad, I hate this. Then all this, all this frustration, it just starts to create this downward spiral. It's like the opposite of flow, and you feel like total crap. um and it's so easy to fall out of flow right now. It's so easy with all the stuff happening in the world, with all the divisiveness happening in the world, with it's so easy. It's so easy to be distracted. It's so easy to be pulled out of your genius, your zone of genius. And really, when we're talking about getting into flow, we're talking about getting into that genius zone. And we all have our own zones that, you know, we have that capability. But again, if you are not in a heart coherent state, meaning the heart and the mind are not getting along, it's going to be really hard. It's impossible to stay in the flow because it's so easy to fall out. Does anyone want to add to that?
Yes, I do. So, you know, getting into the flow state, it's a mastery of self. You have to be disciplined. You have to be focused. And when you struggle within yourself, when you have your own issues, it's hard to get into that flow when you allow the environmental piece, your outside world to influence your inside world, you know. And so that is a skill that is acquired, that is practice. And if you lack that self dedication, you will be easily taken out of the flow zone by the negativity around you.
Yep. Yep. That's so true. So when in your work, Dr. Davies, in your work with addiction recovery and homelessness, how do you see flow showing up in your, let's say your groups, or when you're working with clients? Like, how does the flow state show up for you when you're working with them?
Well, first off, self discipline, mastery of self, because I'm dealing with a population that is abused, forgotten, and lack that self love. Okay. So, what I do is maintain positive, present with them, and I promote motivation by asking them, what do you want? Uh, what's your goals? No one's ever asked anybody that has been struggling, like, what do you like to do? It's always putting them down and telling them bad things. But I like to spice it up and give positive and plant hope. And also when I talk to them, I give a little pieces of my stories that would benefit that motivation. And I mean, when I get into my groups, I can go 90 minutes. And one of the things that I tell them is, what didn't you like about my group? And they'll come, well, we didn't have enough time. I engaged them. I captured them. I was able, and they don't have to say, oh, I'm dealing with this, right? They're like, oh, I can connect inside themselves, and they're picking up the tools. So being present, especially in this field, you have to be in the zone, but it also requires, you know, um, mental clarity, emotional clarity, right? You can't come into this field and have your own issues because you're not going to be coherent. You're not going to be present with, the people that you serve.
Hmm. And in the behavioral health field, in the research that I was doing, your industry, the burnout rate is above average. And
It is.
it's because you are dealing with a population that is used to being talked down to, used to being treated like crap and not cared about. And your job is to restore that person's dignity, that person's humanity, that person's sense of self and sense of I can do something, a sense of accomplishment. I can do something with my
Correct.
life. That helps them get into their own flow of, wow, there's more to me than I realized. And then that hope is what helps them, you know, get over the hump of where they've been. How do you see yourself in the way that you instill this kind of, this hope with people so that they find their own flow, so that they find their own zone of genius, and then it gives them hope to overcome homelessness and addiction. And for these people, they're at a place that a lot of them are at absolute rock bottom, right?
Correct.
But you
Correct.
teach them to find their flow again. And like you said, it starts on the inside.
Correct.
Amanda, you were mentioning something about this piece in terms of flow and what happens with flow when, say someone's in the situation of addiction or homelessness. Can you kind of repeat or remember, at least talk about that? Just riff off of that, and what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, well, and I can't remember exactly what I was saying before. I'm always in the flow state. It's upstream. Like I floated down. My thought is upstream, right? But what's coming to me right now in this moment as I'm hearing Dr. Davies speak is we work on two different ends of the spectrum, right? So I work with like very high achieving executives who, some of them are, multimillionaire status. And
Wow.
you know what is so interesting? The only difference between those two is that somehow my clients were given power. Okay. Now that power might be wrong use of power, right? They might have been given a title that allowed them, but you know what? Behind the scenes, they feel just as much of an imposter, right? Behind the scenes, they don't have a connection with their self. Behind the scenes, they don't have hope. Like I hear that multiple times from my clients that you give me hope. And they don't have a spiritual connection. A lot of times, the people that I'm working with, they really do believe that this position that they're in, it's them. And there's so much pressure on them, right? So my role is actually to get them in tune with self and then put them in right use of power, right? When we are loving ourselves and we are being the vibration of love and acting from there instead of wrong use of power, using a title and using the fact that somebody is a subordinate, which I can't stand that word, because really, if we all showed up authentically, all hierarchy in the world's removed. Every human being is the same, right? So there is no such thing as a subordinate other than in our powerful mind and ego, right? So that's the common denominator. And, Dr. Davies' clients might be at a rock bottom. It's the rock bottom of my clients that actually causes them to change. Because people make changes for one of two reasons. It's from a place of desperation or inspiration. And it's harder to inspire, in my experience, it's harder to inspire somebody to change, especially when they're a millionaire. Something's got to be working, right? But the key is they're not fulfilled. So with my background in human performance and functional genomics and, what I know about the human body physically, oftentimes it's a rock bottom of health that causes them to dial me up. Right? But they have to hit their own rock bottom before they change. So they, in a sense, are so far out of flow because they have been forcing from the use of their mind and the ego. And the ego isn't a bad thing. The ego is just what's keeping us out of fear, right? So they've been trying to force something, and they might have hit these moments of flow at times, and that added to their success. But if they don't know how to repetitively access flow, they're not fulfilled by the work that they do, right? And really, every one of us is born into this world knowing how to access flow. And that's through play. Right? Like imagination and play, and like even like playing with objects outside that cost no money That's flow, that's imagination. But we're not really given enough time in today's modern society to really engage and develop that skill. And in fact, if there's like, we're having an imaginary friend, oftentimes a well-meaning adult is like, oh no, that's not happening. And so it kind of like we I don't know if discipline's the right word, but flow is disciplined or flow is programmed out of us in a way.
Yeah. Yeah. We're being unrealistic, or we're not, we're not being practical. But, I just want to reflect on what both of you said. Now, we have two different you, end of the spectrum. We've got people that are really like in the grips of addiction and homelessness on one end. On the other end, you've got executives that they have all this responsibility. They've got the status. They've got all the trappings and the appearance and the image, but they're still missing that inner connection, right? There's still that inner piece that's missing, and it's a rock bottom. But rock bottom on this side is going to look different than rock bottom on the other side. But it's that rock bottom, that painful rock bottom that tells us we got some work to do. And yet a lot of people are so disconnected from themselves. They don't see that as a, oh, let me look into this. It's like it becomes a repeated looping. It just becomes this looping pattern of doing the same things over and over and over again, and getting the same result. And I know this is like, somebody said this, what is it? Insanity is doing the same things over and over and expecting a different result, So really, if we look at rock bottom, a lot of us might fall into victim energy. And I know, Amanda, you and I talked about victim energy last season. But when we get caught up in victim energy, I mean, this perpetuates the rock bottom. This pulls us out of flow so fast, and it keeps us out of flow, and it perpetuates this downward spiral. So when we are at rock bottom, we have a choice. Do I want to keep doing this, or do I want to do something different? And that's when we can start taking action. And what I love about the work that you both do is you're reconnecting people to that source that is what helps to create that flow. So, and that is the first essential piece in the work that I do with culture transformation. It is an inside, everything starts as an inside job, right? Starts from the self-connection, connecting to the source of our true self. Who are we? And what do I want? What makes me happy? And feeling that, I think self-love is something that we all need to learn, because it's just like, I grew up thinking that self-love meant you were, conceited. And so it wasn't right to love yourself, but it is critical that we love ourselves, because then we know how to take care of ourselves. We know how to, give self-love instead of self-hate, because that pulls us out of the flow too, right? We were talking before we jumped on the show, that when we get negative, when we just really let the negativity take over, that chokes the flow state.
It does.
And to really learn how to get back into flow, we have to get back in the body. We have to get out of our heads and get back into the body. Get back into the body. Anyone
I like that. Yeah, I want to chime in. So, but also being a resilient leader and being on the battlefield, I'm a leader on the front lines of this battle of addiction, homelessness, and mental health. And everybody has their drive, their why, their purpose. And one of my secret sauce, something that I have, is my passion. I love what I do. That's my flow. That's what ignites my flow state. is my passion to make a change. I come to work ready. I'm in that state. Oh, okay, let's handle business. Okay, because I love what I do. Without passion and your why, it's going to be very hard to lead and to help others when you can't even have that for yourself. And being in the front lines with all this craziness, I don't know if you guys look on the news about the homelessness and addiction and mental health. I love working with them. I'm not afraid of this population. I'm not afraid. My passion outweighs the bullcrap. My passion keeps me in my zone and keeps me present with people. And I get to observe this humanistic piece of this person. I get to hear their story. And then as they're telling me their story and they feel comfortable talking to me, they don't feel put down. Then as they're talking to me, I'm like, okay, they want this, 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 this. And when they say they want change, that's when I go ahead and step in and, okay, now you're asking for help. And they trust me enough to guide them because of my resilient past and my colorful past and who I am today. But my power, my motivation, my words come out. And because I'm in my flow zone, right? But it's fueled by my passion. So that makes me flexible, adaptable, and not and yes, everything changes and all these little fiery darts, but as long as I stay in my flow and stay connected with myself, penetration cannot take away from me. The negativity around and the environment and the people that I deal with, it doesn't affect me because my passion outrides the bullshit. Excuse me, are we allowed to cuss on here? I apologize.
Yeah, good. Do it. Say what you want to say. Yeah. So, yeah, no, you make a really valid point, Dr. Davies, because how many people in your industry are not passionate about what they're doing? It's just a buck. It's just all in a day's work and, means to an end. Like how many uh, companies do you see doing that in your industry, Dr. Davies?
It's well, in the industry, there's a lot of burnout. There's a lot of burnout. And in the behavioral health field, there's certain sectors in each under that umbrella. You got your SUD, substance use treatment providers, then you have your mental health providers, and then you have your housing providers, and then you got your medical providers. We all connect together, and we have to be in the flow state in order to and collaborate in helping the individual that wants to change. I love being an SUD provider, which is substance use treatment provider. I love what I do, and I don't get burnout because of why. I have that connection with myself. I have a self-care, self-love. I believe in me. I have hope. So what happens is that the hope that I have, I'm able to instill and pass on that hope to an individual that has no hope. So instill hope where hope was lost. Very important. Because as a human, when you feel worthless, you're not going to try to fight for yourself to change your life. You're going to be stuck. And I've seen it. And so when you communicate, and that the power of words is so powerful in this field, because you will light that little fire, plant that little seed, and then help them water it to believe in themselves. Because to overcome your addiction, mental health, and homelessness, you have to be able to have that passion, that self-love, to fight, to fight back and get out of that mental state of desperation or hope. Hopelessness is also an enemy. Hopelessness is one of those that will kill an individual because they have no hope, no passion, no drive, and they want to give up. And it takes you out of the flow state.
The flow state, yeah. So, you bring up a really good point, Dr. Davies, in your work, and that is, You got to have hope. Without hope, you will not find the flow state. You got to have hope. You got to believe there's hope. If something's hopeless, like Dr. Davies, when you in your field, you can't afford to not be passionate about your work because people die when you
Correct.
when you don't care about them, because you're
Correct.
dealing with people that have lost hope. And
Yes.
that means that in your industry, the stakes are high, right?
The stakes are very high. The stakes are
Mhm.
very high. The overdoses of fentanyl and all that stuff is just out of control right now. A lot of people are dying, and it does have an effect on those who we serve, on the providers, because you connect and you teach, and and you work, and it's a mutual journey together. But that little one time that person gets out of their flow state, and they pick up, well, that could be their last time. So you know um, a human death is it's very serious. It's very,
Yes.
very serious.
Yes. So
To just go off of that hope as well, that is something that in the industry that I work with, I'm dealing with high performing execs who are surrounded by money, and that hopelessness and those deaths, there's a good number of those as well. Like, so just thinking of my clients last year in 2023, all of my clients survived, but several of them contemplated suicide, which is how they got to me. And they were connected. There's probably 20 suicides that occurred in the millionaire, billionaire level, or overdoses, that occurred at that level of the clients that I'm connected to. So there is a lot. I remember this client telling me about this one guy. He's like, Amanda, he's a billionaire. Like he was telling me everything that he had. Nobody knows why he committed suicide. But that's a piece of, like, they don't have the hope. I see that across the board in the clients that I work with, and clients at that level who believe they have to be somebody in the world, but it's not who they authentically are. And so they're like, if this is the way life is going to be, like, I want to check out. This is not right. Mm-hmm. And the other thing that I realized in working with the clients that I work with is that, money is an energy exchange. So to one of my clients, $1,000 might be like $10 to one of Dr. Davies' clients, but it doesn't matter. It's all the same. So if one of my clients was to lose their job and have to live in my home, which is a beautiful home in the forest worth about $500,000, it would be considered poverty to them, though, because they're used to luxury. They're used to, like, that would be homelessness. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. That's another thing that I discovered in working at this level. And that's why I say, like, if we all showed up authentically, like, fear is fear. It doesn't matter if you're fearing for a meal or you're afraid that you can't meet the needs of those who you feel like you're responsible for. Mm-hmm. There's fear in the body. And we don't, as human beings, we don't want to feel those depleting emotions. None of us. I do this work professionally. I help people to feel. It doesn't make it any easier for me in my humanness to want to feel guilt and shame and sadness and anger and frustration. And that's where addiction comes in. Addiction is anything that we do to block that feeling. So there is a good number of addictions at the level that I work with, but sometimes they look different. Sometimes it's the work addiction where we can't pull that executive away from his phone to even be present with his family. Because he literally has this need to be needed in a way. It's what adds to his self-worth and self-value, because he doesn't have any self-worth and self-value. So the more people need him, the more valuable he must be. Right. And really, when it comes to our self-worth and our self-value, we let society put a number on that with what we make. We do. Right. And what our education level is. But you know what? Real self-worth and self-value is the level of transformation that we provide to another human being with a simple conversation. Right. Right. So if all of us think about it, regardless of what our background or education is, every single one of us has impacted somebody's life in a way that is priceless. Mm-hmm. right? That is worth
Yeah.
so much to that individual. That's our self-value and self-worth. It's not in the dollar exchange that society has put on things. That's one of the things that's wrong, is that our self-worth is far beyond the dollar. And here's one of the ways that I'm starting to look at self-value and self-worth and helping people to recognize this when I'm working with people who don't have as much money in their account. I asked them the simple question: if the world was to shut down tomorrow, if we lost all electricity and all technology, how valuable are you? I can tell you my executive who is worth $10 million isn't very valuable. He doesn't know how to get his own food. Right? Like, so if we start to look at value a little bit, but that homeless person on the streets, they know how to live on the streets. They're starving, damn it. So suddenly they have a self-worth and value that executive might be like, okay, buddy, teach me how. Is what we're going for. So, and there's some stuff that I just wanted to plant the seed on passion. You know, several years ago, somebody had pointed out to me that if we go back, I think it's the Latin root of passion is to suffer for. Like, what are we willing to suffer for? Right. And I think I've done a lot of work in the mental health fields as well. Healthcare. I came out of a healthcare allopathic world. But I do, in the work that I do, I work a lot with mental health. And there is such a burnout because we can't meet somebody else's needs if we're not meeting our own. But what if instead of to suffer for, what I hear Dr. Davies saying is she is offering. She's not suffering. She is offering herself to the world. So if we just shifted what we're passionate about is an offering. Right? Even a parent to a child, like I've heard so many parents, well, I suffer to have this child. I see it differently. You made an offering to bring a child into the world. And that simple shift in perspective might help us, because that I'm suffering means that I'm being harmed by something I'm doing. And I don't hear anything about what Dr. Davies saying that it's harmful to her, right? Her passion is an offering to the world of this is how I can help.
Exactly. And you mentioned something about perspective, which dovetails into our next segment, which is, you know, how do we get back into flow? I mean, we can choose to get back into flow. It's a choice. If we're gonna keep playing victim, oh, life hates me, my life nothing goes right for me. I mean, we're not helping ourselves. So I think the perspective, changing the channel, right? Like I forget where I heard that from, but changing the channel. What are we focusing on? I think perspective is, first of all, I think the perspective needs to be hopeful. We need to have hope. Say, yeah, things suck right now, but I know things are going to get better. I know I just got to keep doing what I'm doing. It's going to get better. Just that little tiny bit of hope. Just hang in there. I'm going to hang in there. I mean, it takes such self-love to really drop into yourself. And yes, I'm feeling bad right now. We're going through some stuff, but I know I just got to hang in there. I just got to keep doing the next right thing, and things are going to work out. And then suddenly that acceptance comes. So once you have hope, now there's acceptance. There's acceptance, right? That things are crappy, but we're working on it. We're going to make things better. It's going to get better. I know it. I feel it. Right.
Yeah. And oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I just know we have to wrap it up soon. That hope to bring it back to flow state, that hope that you're speaking of is exactly what puts us back in flow. So it's what allows us to, if we think of flow state as us, as the human being and all of our experiences floating down a river. You know, sometimes life puts us in the level 5 rapids where, there's a lot of shit that we can bounce into, right? But if I surrender into hope, bouncing up against those rocks in level 5 rapids doesn't hurt as much.
Yeah, yeah. And I see Bethany York here. Bethany York says, the homeless predicament in my state, which is Maine, has grown to large proportions. Suicide, whether wealthy or not, is never the answer. I totally agree, Bethany. And then we've got Another one from Donna Kelly Trawler. No matter how you paint it, there is no comparison between a wealthy person and a homeless person when it comes to struggling for that next meal or piece of clothing to stay warm. Yes, I agree, Donna. Thank you. Yeah, so I mean, getting back into flow is really getting in tune with our own emotional state. We got to learn how to sit with those difficult emotions, learn how to breathe through it, learn how to hold ourselves with such great compassion because we're human. And as humans, we have times when we're on top of things and things are great. We're going to have those down times too. And we have to have kindness for ourselves in those moments and just be able to sit with those emotions, be with them, breathe through them, allow them to be there because these feelings also belong. They're telling us something. Maybe they're not pleasant. However, if we not, if we can make use of those emotions in terms of as a feedback mechanism rather than as a condemnation, like we're cursed for life, because that's not helping us. But if we can
No.
use these difficult emotions to be, okay, this is telling me something. Either I'm not getting something I need. What do I need? What is calling to me? And how can I provide for myself and just hold myself right now and know that it's going to be okay, and just rest in the moment, release the stories, release the narratives that keep us locked in this perpetual state of, self-sabotage. This is the first prison we have to release ourselves from, is that inner prison, the critic, how we criticize ourselves, how we judge ourselves. That is the fastest way to fall out of flow. So it is 7:43, and I know we were going to try to keep these episodes short. So is there any last words that we want to close out this segment with?
Well, perception is very key when we're in the flow state, and how we feel inside. Right. One of my quotes, is how an individual perceives self can influence and distort the perception of the world around them. And how we perceive things also can influence our flow state. And healing inner self, healing inner traumas, changing mindset, like that transformative process is the key. Is your perception, your beliefs, wanting to change, hope, right? What's your why? What's your passion to make that change? Is very key. But you have to be willing to do the footwork, and that's one of the things some people lack, and they get out of the flow state, because life happens. We have to pay bills and stuff, and when we start stressing out, and we can't, and humans need their basic needs, and if they're not being met, we change that and we go into survival mode, and we learn to survive instead of thrive in our environment.
Mm-hmm.
So taking care of self is key and important. Inner self, outer self, they all have to be connected together.
Yep. That's very important. How about you, Amanda? Any last comments before we close out?
Yeah, I think just to echo what Dr. Davies said, is it all starts with self. It all starts with the one in the mirror, right? So we can't give to others what we don't have within ourselves. And there's also an internal resonance. We can't see in others what we don't have in ourselves. So if we ourselves don't have hope, we can't be giving somebody else hope, and that victim mentality of somebody else has it better than us is, again, taking our power away from ourselves. And when we bring it back home to self-love, which takes a lot of work, as Dr. Davies mentioned, it is not easy to sit with and to feel those feelings of guilt and shame and frustration and anger, and to release those without our own self-judgment.
Mhm.
kind of cleanse the portal of the human body. Those energies are what take us out of flow. They literally hijack the heart's rhythm and take us out of flow state. But it gives our mind something, to stay busy with. And some people have this need to be in chaos, and that's for another episode. But like whatever our first 7 years of life were like will impact the operating system of our nervous system, and we're constantly hijacking ourselves back to that. So if it's
Right.
chaos or peace, we're constantly trying to get back to that, and we might be living
Mhm.
through time,
Right.
right? But it
Yeah.
all starts with the one in the mirror.
Yeah, yeah. And we can just simply say, when you fall out of flow, you can pretty much bet you are in an incoherent state. So the heart and the mind are not getting along. And the very first step is, like I said, change your perspective. But what helps to change your perspective is to get the heart and the mind back in harmony. And that makes it easier to change the perspective. So it's to turn down the volume of stress, turn it down, use the tools, turn it down, and then change the channel. So that in a nutshell is how to get back into the flow, right? So, and we went over the exercise that helps to do that. And when we first started this segment, we did a heart lock-in, and that's one of the tools developed by HeartMath Institute to help us turn down that volume of stress so that we can change a channel. But anyway, that's our conversation for today. Our very
Yay.
first episode of season 2, and looking forward to bringing this conversation going deeper over the next 6 sessions. Yeah, so till next time, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to everyone who commented and engaged. Really appreciate your support, your engagement. We really appreciate it. And so till next time, this is Suzette West and
Goodbye.
Amanda and Dr. Davies signing off.
Goodbye.
Bye.